almost 2 decades, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were viewed as one of the most iconic cross-industry couples. A celebrated Oscar-winning actress paired with a global country music sensation who seemed to defy all expectations. But beyond the glamour of award shows and shared stage moments, their relationship was quietly unraveling. Newly surfaced legal reports suggest that Nicole officially filed for divorce after nearly 19 years of marriage, with insiders claiming she made serious efforts to hold things together. Keith's first appearance on stage after the split raised eyebrows. There was no wedding ring, no tribute to Nicole and his music, and even subtle lyric changes that hinted at a different narrative. The once picture-perfect image has now cracked, and for the first time, Nicole's perspective is starting to come into focus. In this deep dive, we explore what made their relationship so admired and what ultimately brought an end to one of the most talked-about love stories in entertainment. Nicole from a reserved girl to Hollywood royalty. Nicole Mary Kidman entered the world in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1967, born to Australian parents who were living overseas at the time. Her father, Andy Kidman, worked as a clinical psychologist and biochemist, while her mother, Janelle, built a career as both a nurse and educator. At a young age, the family relocated to Sydney, Australia, where Nicole was raised in an environment shaped by discipline, education, and ambition. Interestingly, the confident and elegant persona she later became known for was a stark contrast to her early personality. As a child, Nicole was extremely shy. Speaking in class often caused her to blush intensely to the point where teachers questioned her self-confidence. However, she gradually found a way to express herself, first through ballet, then acting classes, and eventually youth theater. These creative outlets allowed her to channel emotions she struggled to communicate in everyday life. By her teenage years, her natural talent had become impossible to ignore. At the time, Australia's film industry was gaining momentum, and Nicole stepped into the spotlight with early roles in television productions. Her breakthrough came in 1983 with the cult film BMX Bandits. While her striking appearance made her noticeable, it was her emotional depth and range that truly impressed filmmakers. It became clear she was destined for something much bigger. By the late 1980s, Hollywood had taken notice. During this phase of rising fame, Nicole crossed paths with Tom Cruise, marking the beginning of a relationship that would define a significant chapter of her life. The two married in 1990, quickly becoming one of the most photographed couples in the world. While the union elevated Nicole's status, it also brought personal challenges. Tom's involvement in Scientology reportedly cast a complicated shadow over their marriage. Although Nicole has remained largely private about that period, it is widely understood that when the marriage ended in 2001, she not only lost her partner, but also primary custody of their adopted children, Isabella and Connor. The emotional impact was profound. Those close to her later shared that she felt distance from motherhood itself, no longer the center of her children's lives. For someone who deeply valued family, this experience left a lasting mark. It may explain why years later, when she met Keith Urban, she was determined to rebuild the sense of home and family she owned for nearly 2 decades. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were seen as one of entertainment's most admired power couples. An Academy Award-winning actress alongside a world-famous country music star, a relationship that looked strong through every red carpet appearance, public event, and emotional tribute. But behind the spotlight, things may not have been as perfect as they appeared. According to newly circulating reports, Nicole has reportedly taken official steps toward ending their marriage after almost 19 years together. Sources close to the situation claim she spent years trying to preserve the relationship before finally reaching her breaking point. Then came Keith's first public appearance after the rumored split, and fans immediately noticed the changes. No wedding ring. No mention of Nicole during the performance. Even certain lyrics appeared slightly altered, leading many to believe the story behind their relationship may have shifted completely. Now, the image of the perfect Hollywood marriage is beginning to crack, and for the first time, attention is turning toward Nicole's side of the story. In today's deep dive, we're looking at how their relationship became one of the most admired love stories in entertainment, and what may have ultimately caused it to fall apart. Nicole Kidman's journey to Hollywood royalty didn't begin with fame or confidence. She was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, in 1967 while her Australian parents were temporarily living overseas. Her father, Anthony Kidman, built a respected career as a psychologist and biochemist, while her mother, Janelle, worked as both a nurse and educator. Not long after Nicole's birth, the family returned to Sydney, Australia, where she spent most of her childhood in a disciplined and academically focused household. Ironically, the graceful and composed woman the world later came to know was once painfully shy. As a child, Nicole struggled with speaking in public and would often blush intensely whenever attention was placed on her. Teachers reportedly worried about her confidence, but she eventually discovered an outlet that changed everything: performance. She first explored ballet, then acting classes, before eventually becoming involved in local theater productions. For Nicole, acting became more than a hobby. It gave her a voice she couldn't always express in everyday life. Ironically, the graceful and composed woman the world later came to know was once painfully shy. As a child, Nicole struggled with speaking in public and would often blush intensely whenever attention was placed on her. Teachers reportedly worried about her confidence, but she eventually discovered an outlet that changed everything: performance. She first explored ballet, then acting classes, before eventually becoming involved in local theater productions. For Nicole, acting became more than a hobby. It gave her a voice she couldn't always express in everyday life. By the time she reached her teenage years, her talent was impossible to ignore. Australia's entertainment industry was beginning to expand during the early 1980s, and Nicole quickly started landing television and film roles. Her breakout moment arrived in 1983 with the cult classic BMX Bandits. While audiences immediately noticed her striking appearance, directors became even more impressed by the emotional depth she brought to every performance. Industry insiders began predicting that her future extended far beyond Australia. That prediction soon became reality. By the late 1980s, Hollywood studios had started paying attention, and Nicole's career entered a completely new level. During this rise to international fame, she met Tom Cruise, a relationship that would become one of the biggest celebrity stories of the era. The two married in 1990 and rapidly transformed into one of the most photographed couples in the world. But behind the glamorous headlines, the marriage reportedly came with serious emotional challenges. Tom's close connection to Scientology allegedly created tension throughout their relationship. Although Nicole has rarely spoken publicly about that chapter of her life, many reports have suggested that the divorce in 2001 deeply affected her on a personal level. Beyond losing her marriage, she also experienced emotional distance from her adopted children, Isabella and Connor, after custody arrangements shifted following the separation. People close to Nicole later claimed the experience left a lasting emotional scar. Family had always been central to her identity, and losing that sense of closeness reportedly changed her forever. Many now believe that when she eventually met Keith Urban years later, she saw him not only as a romantic partner, but as someone who could help her rebuild the feeling of stability and home she once believed she had lost. Keith Urban's story unfolded very differently. Born in New Zealand before later growing up in Queensland, Australia, Keith developed a reputation early on as talented but restless. Music became the one constant in his life. His father, Bob Urban, was passionate about country music and introduced Keith to the guitar at a young age. By the time he was just 6 years old, Keith was already performing publicly and showing signs of extraordinary musical ability. He lost Keith, a gifted musician searching for stability. Keith Lionel Urban was born in Wangaratta, New Zealand in the same year as Nicole. Not long after, his family moved to Queensland, Australia, where he spent most of his childhood. From an early age, Keith displayed a restless and rebellious streak, often searching for an escape or sense of direction. His father, Bob Urban, ran a convenience store, but had a deep passion for country music, a genre that wasn't particularly mainstream in their surroundings. He introduced Keith to the guitar at a very young age, and by just 6 years old, Keith was already performing. Country music, with its raw storytelling of heartbreak and redemption, became both an identity and an emotional outlet for him. Despite his undeniable musical ability, his upbringing wasn't without challenges. Reports suggest that his family environment was marked by tension and financial struggles, which may have influenced his ongoing desire for stability later in life. As a teenager, he performed in local competitions and small venues, steadily building both his musical style and his public image, a mix of soulful country artist and a rebellious rock-influenced performer. Before long, he made a bold decision to leave school behind, choosing instead to fully commit to his passion for music. For Keith, there was never a backup plan. This path was everything. Music wasn't just a passion, it was his only way forward. But along with his raw talent came personal struggles. By his early 20s, he had already started experimenting with alcohol and other destructive habits. When fame finally arrived, instead of grounding him, it intensified the chaos in his life. In the early 1990s, he made the move to Nashville, determined to make a name for himself. After years of relentless effort, performing in small venues and chasing opportunities, his breakthrough finally came in 1999 with his self-titled American debut album. Almost overnight, Keith became one of country music's rising stars, recognized for his exceptional guitar skills, signature look, and emotionally charged voice. Yet behind the spotlight, his life remained turbulent. Success came hand in hand with self-sabotage. By the time he crossed paths with Nicole in 2005, he had already faced multiple stints in rehabilitation. Deep down, he carried a constant fear that his addictions could one day destroy everything he had worked so hard to achieve. On the surface, Nicole and Keith appeared to belong to entirely different worlds. Hollywood elegance meeting Nashville authenticity. But what truly connected them was something far deeper: the emotional weight they both carried. Nicole was still healing from